Ready?
All right.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. All right. Welcome. Good afternoon and welcome to the May 13th, 2020 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you for that. Item 3 is public comment, and we will do public comment the way we have now been doing it for about 2 months with remote participation. And that is as follows. Hillary Waite, our executive secretary, will unmute all the mics of all of the participants here. And anyone who wishes to speak in public comment will state their name. And if they are participating by phone, state the last 4 digits of their phone number so we can identify you. Hillary will then mute all the mics, or mute all of the sound, all the mics, I guess you will. All the mics, and then we will go down the list of all those who wish to participate in public comment, unmuting them as we go along. So each person will get a chance to speak unfettered by noise from other participants. So hopefully that's clear. One more time, we're going to unmute all the mics. I'm going to ask people who wish to participate to state their name. If they're participating by phone, to state the last 4 digits of their phone number. So we can identify you, and then we'll mute everyone and we will go down the line and unmute those who wish to participate in order. So with that, Hillary, if you could unmute all of the mics. Tell me when that's done.
Yes, the lines are unmuted now.
All right. Anyone who wishes to participate in public comment, please state your name, and if you're participating by phone, please give us the last 4 digits of your phone number. And again, anyone who wishes to participate in public comment, please state your name, and if you're participating by phone, please state the last 4 digits of your phone number. Going once, going twice. All right. Doesn't appear we have anyone for public comment. Hillary, you can go ahead and mute all of the mics except for the members and Mr. Denny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, it's just a brief overview.
It's not so much that they need like fast food.
Hillary, just a minute, Mike. Hillary, if you could unmute, if you could mute all the mics except for the members.
Yes, there's quite a few people in the meeting, so it's going through the list.
All right, sorry about that. And if anyone's on, we're trying to prevent background noise from interfering. So if you're not unmuted by mistake, if you just could go ahead and mute yourself. But all right, the item 4 is our COVID-19 update, and I'll go back to Mr. Dennehy. Mike?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and members of the board and members of the viewing audience. On Monday, we held a department head meeting. It is the first of several that we're going to host with respect to the potential of reopening of town government, some aspects of town government. As many of you know, Town Hall and other town buildings have been closed for quite some time. Services have been limited to some extent. So we brought all the department heads in. It was a very good effort. Basically, what I'm trying to do is reach out to the subject matter experts, listen to their staffers, what's been working well since and during the shutdown, what needs attention again before we open the doors, if we open the doors, essentially what their pressing needs were, and what some of the concerns that they would face with the reopening. It was a very healthy discussion. Ultimately, we're going to need the support of our health director, our IT department, and our consolidated facilities department, who helps maintain buildings around town, to make sure that we have the safest possible environment, both for our workers and for the public as they come into the buildings. So we've formed an ad hoc task force, if you will. A lot of the concerns we heard were people entering the building and making sure that we have systems in place so that social distancing, which is not going away certainly in the near future, for people that choose to do business in town hall or in other town buildings or participate in classes in the Council on Aging, that will have proper social distancing. Buildings will be cleaned properly and maintained. And then we talked about, we drilled down to some of the more mundane day-to-day operations, like how can the Parks Department start to cut the grass more religiously? And how can, the Water Department go inspect water meters inside people's homes? So again, a very good meeting, very preliminary. We're going to follow up again next week, but a lot of the concerns a lot of things are working well since we closed down some of the town buildings. And some of them are leaning towards a soft opening, if you will, and we'll take a lot of direction from our state leadership when it comes to this. But a lot of them are suggesting possibly doing appointments by work by appointment only. That way we've got one person in and one person out. And the IT department is working on a form of Office 365 that would allow for bookings. The building commissioner is interested, the clerk's office is interested, the assessor's office, potentially the treasurer's office. So it was preliminary. It was very useful. We heard a lot of the same stuff about potentially having to use thermometers. There are some departments in town that obviously need a lot more direction from the state. You talked to Paul D'Amano and his recreational camps. I was on a call yesterday with the weekly call with the Lieutenant Governor, and they're putting together a handbook on how to handle recreational facilities and, when it'll be safe to open playground equipment, if at all, and how do you keep those clean. But Paul's concern, which is well understood, and many of the members of the community have been reaching out, is, when and if we can open up the summer camps. What's Milton going to do with their MSE program? So a lot of that stuff we still have to take direction from our state government, so we're listening. And as many of you know, the governor released a 4-phase rollout yesterday, and more details to follow. So we'll be following that closely, understanding that keeping the employee and any member of the public that touches the door handles or chooses to enter town buildings when and if we start to reopen things was the major concern for most. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have. I'll just let you know that this is something that's going to be a developing situation based on which way the state moves going forward.
Thank you, Mike. Before we get to questions, I know Caroline Kinsella isn't with us tonight. Do you have any update from Caroline?
I do, yeah. I talked to Caroline. The message is still the same. She wants the public to practice social distancing, no congregating, wear your mask if you can't social distance per the governor's order. The state numbers just came in. Milton's infected rate went from 270 to 275 today. So 5 new cases in Milton. But she wanted me to continue to reinforce social distancing. She did send an email out to town hall employees that some people weren't necessarily wearing masks, and she understands that is concerning to those that are wearing masks. So we're advising everyone who works in town hall to make sure that they're wearing a mask at all times. So again, she just wanted to reinforce those CDC tips, which she has been.
All right, comments and questions from the members on either Caroline or the reopening. All right, seeing none, item 4B is an update, if any, on the virtual town meeting. And I think we have Mr. Hiss and Frank Schroth. Hillary, could you unmute Bob Hiss and Frank Schroth, please? I see Richard's here as well. Make sure Richard's not muted unless he's muting himself. Okay, great. Richard, did you have anything on I don't know if you were muted by choice or because Hillary didn't unmute you. Did you have anything on the first item? You all okay? Oh, can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Oh, you're muted. Can't hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, got me now?
Gotcha.
Okay, so I'll wait till the chief. I have one point that I want to raise when Chief King's here.
Okay, fair enough.
Thanks.
Yeah, all right, Frank and Bob, updates on the virtual town meeting, if any.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. So our committee is meeting at least twice a week now on Tuesdays and Thursdays for a couple-hour design sessions. I'll let Frank talk about the work he's leading in that. Just a couple highlights. We've established some connections with Brookline. So their committee chair to Frank are now established. So we're sharing the design process. Doing the same with the Lexington town meeting. They're going to be, I think, the first one out of the gate on June 1. And they've got actually a dry run session they're inviting us to tomorrow. So I think Frank is going to get a chance to attend that and see. They're going to use a Zoom meeting plus some other technologies. And any other highlights? I think the legislation, last I heard, is still sitting in the House Ways and Means. Has not exited out of that yet, unless someone has an update that perhaps Kevin does or someone does today. The path I heard is that is most likely to go from there to the House. It may have to go through an administrative, municipalities committee, not certain. So we don't quite have the authorization yet to go hit the starting gun, so to speak. And but we are assuming that it will occur, and we're proceeding apace. So that's kind of the high level. Frank, updates for the committee and attendees?
Yeah, so essentially what we're doing is with the charge that we were given by the moderator and along with the draft legislation, that's what's basically informing the design we come up with, which is essentially to bring the procedures and the processes of town meeting into alignment with the features and functions that exist in Zoom technology. And we're honestly learning as we go. There are different tiers of service that have different levels of capabilities, and we're in the process of testing a variety of them. I'll give you one quick, simple example. You're familiar with the raise hand feature. You're also perhaps familiar with the chat feature. Brookline is going to go with a chat feature as a method of registering speakers at town meeting who wish to speak. Alternatively, you can use the raise hand feature. These are the sorts of things we're looking at to determine which is the most intuitive and easy to manage. Our mantra is basically to keep this design as simple as we can within the parameters of what we have to work with. And again, I would like to just respectfully suggest that at town meeting, when we're conducting it, anything that can be done to simplify either the technology or the process or anything else is probably to be ardently wished for. Bob is correct. Lexington is the first to go out of the gate. I do plan to attend their dry run session. I believe it's on Friday, Bob.
Friday, right.
And, you know, again, all these towns, and just to give a quick shout out, the moderators and the committee people I've been working with in other communities have been extraordinarily supportive and willing to exchange information. The fact is we're all learning as we go here. No one has done this. And so like everything else associated with this situation we find ourselves in, there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Honestly, while I have the floor, my primary concern is town meeting member engagement. I think has been noted at a previous meeting. The response to our initial survey was only 30%. By way of contrast, Brookline got an 80% response rate. Wow. And I just want to, again, respectfully encourage and state that this is, in my opinion, and I'm just speaking for myself, a collective responsibility that all elected officials in this community have to see that we get this meeting and get this budget passed. And it's going to require a collective effort. Bob's put in Bob is putting in an enormous amount of time. Galvin is putting in an enormous amount of time. The 5 of you clearly are putting in an enormous amount of time. And I think our town meeting members need to put in some time to participate in the training and the testing of this if we're going to see things move smoothly. And I'm not intending to be critical here, but I do want to try to encourage people to get involved.
Yeah, 2 updates. We're going to drop a direct mail piece for all the town meeting members. Ironically, we're going to put snail mail out to tell them about a virtual town meeting. Because I know we did, for example, did have members where it got, the note got caught in their spam filter and they were unaware. So that could be happening. I have Comcast, that happens a lot. Second, you asked last week about getting a town copy. So thanks to Jim Segroy and Rob Mallett, they hustled, they pushed the vendor. They think they reached their hand up the cord in the internet and pulled Zoom down into the town. So we now have a copy for a year sufficient to run this and future town meetings for attendees up to 500, I think. And so we've now got the software that we're using in the design section. So thanks to them for that.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Frank. Questions or comments from the members? Seeing none, we had talked last week about a letter of support for this legislation, because in order to do everything we're planning for, we need the legislature and the governor to cooperate to get this legislation passed. It's passed the Senate. We circulated, and it was a revised draft late this afternoon of a proposed letter that would go, I guess, to the House reps to encourage them to move the legislation forward, and the governor as well to encourage him to sign it. So I'm not sure if the members had a chance to look at it. Should we, if it's approved, or if we can approve it with some ministerial changes, then we can get that off and try to lend our voice to those who want this to pass as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair, I read it. I thought it was fine. I had no comments.
All right.
It's,
Melinda?
I agree. I don't have any comments. I thought it was a good letter.
Okay. All right. So we'll get that out. We'll get that out we'll send it to our representatives, and I know they're on it as well, but anything we can do to encourage it, and then we'll send it to the governor as well to encourage him. It's a short letter, just telling them that we are planning this, that we have a committee and a moderator that are working very hard to plan this remote participating town meeting, and that we'd like this legislation passed as soon as possible so we have some lead time for it, and that we can actually do it on June 15th. So that's the essence of the letter, asking them for that support.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Yes, Mr. Denny.
Yeah, so Mr. Moderator had mentioned, and Frank Schroff had mentioned that they've been working with Lexington, and I think you said June 1st was the date, Mr. Moderator?
That's right.
Yeah, so I received an email from Jim Malloy, who's their town manager. He's also suggesting, he thinks that representative town meetings is what's holding this up at the House Ways and Means, and is advising that the letter be addressed to Chair Aaron Michaelwitz. So the letter that this board has drafted, I can specifically send to his attention, understanding that it's his assumption that the representative town meeting is the holdup at this time.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Ms. Collins.
So, Mike, why Representative Michaelwitz then? What does that mean?
He's the chair of Ways and Means in the House.
Okay. Yes, well, I knew that, but okay, so just directing it to him. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mike Lynch, I think you're muted on one of your lines. I just want to, you may need to mute your host line as well, just in case there's any feedback there. Just there you go. Okay, great. All right. If there's nothing else, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Bob. To be continued. And we have been meeting weekly. We may indeed meet next week. We'll be talking about that later, and I'm sure we'll have you in to give us an update then. This will be a constant fun for us to.
Very good.
Yeah. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
Stay well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, item 4C, discussion of the summer concerts. Hillary, could you unmute Bonnie DeVore? who is with our Parks Department. And this is a discussion of what we may do with the summer concerts. Mike Denny, I don't know, do you want to set the stage here, or should we go right into Bonnie?
Yeah, just very briefly, what I need to talk is, as many of you know, that the Baron Hugo Gazebo on Town Hall is the host of many summer concerts and has been for years. Bonnie DeVore does a lot of work behind the scenes to schedule all these different performers to be there. It's a wonderful night out. Those of you that know that are usually repeat offenders. As Traffic Mitigation Committee Chair Jeff Mullen always says, we have a lot of season ticket holders to these things. The idea is basically we're at a crossroads here, and Bonnie's looking for some direction from this board as to how to proceed. They usually start mid-June, usually when school gets out. But Bonnie can go into details as to what some of the hurdles are, obviously understanding that the situation that we're in. Just looking for a little bit of direction from this board.
Bonnie, you're on.
Yeah. Hi, good evening, Chisel's board. Mike, thanks for having me. Just briefly, yep, I have the schedule. It was actually set to begin only weeks away. The first week of June is actually usually the first concert that begins. The first concert followed by the children's concert, which is well over 200 attendees usually with all the children. So obviously, given the situation that we're at, I'm here looking to move the summer concerts that I had scheduled prior to the COVID-19 guidelines being put in place. I had already set up several concerts for June, maybe just a couple in July, but once the guidelines were put in place, I didn't take it any further, knowing full well that those could possibly end up having to be moved from June into July, possibly August, and if at all, obviously, I don't even know if we're even able to hold those concerts. So I was just looking for some guidance from the board as to what we think we should do moving forward for the concerts this summer.
Comments or questions from the members? Richard.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
Hi.
As Bonnie knows, Mrs. Wells has been a repeat offender there for many years on those summer concerts. I did see the mayor today canceled all of everything through Labor Day. As you know, I sit on Milton Music Fest, which would be held the fourth week in June. We had thought of trying to hold off until October, and the committee is meeting at 8:30 tonight to discuss what looks like it's going to have to be not at all this year. My only thought to Bonnie is, and I was listening to, I don't know what community the other day, I think June you're going to have a problem with that, especially something with kids, is perhaps give up June and July and hopefully things get, that maybe the first couple of weeks of August you could ask, maybe double up, have 2 a week instead of 1 week. I don't know, but I think you're going to have a hard time with June and July, just given what, even though the governor hasn't done it yet, and the way that they happen, it's kids, it's running around, it's tough to enforce social distance, especially as you know, Bonnie, your kids' concert is heavily attended. I mean, it's a small grassy area. Yeah,
Yes,
so
wonderful.
I think it's going to be tough for you. I mean, this is, I don't know how many times I've said this. I mean, we're human beings, and human beings are meant to be social. I listened to a resident yesterday who's a hugger, and is almost in tears because they can't hug anymore. They don't know what they're ever going to do. So I know these are tough decisions, but I think June and July you'd really have. I'd be more inclined to maybe relook at it again as you get closer to August instead of having to cancel the whole thing. But I think it's an up to. Have you asked Caroline at all? Have you asked Caroline her thoughts on this?
I did, and when I originally spoke to her the middle of last week, she's obviously looking to see what Governor Baker says, and that was prior to what Mayor Walsh announced later on in the week. So I figured that may play a little bit into this also, as to what we want to do.
I agree with you. I mean, he's canceled every parade, every neighborhood get together, all the feasts, anything where the social distancing is really an issue. And as we saw Dr. Fauci as he testified before the Senate committee yesterday, these are people who developed their whole life to science, and you can see the stress in their faces. So I hate to say it because I know how special this is. It's as you know, you've been running this now for X amount of years.
Or,
You get the same people come all the time. You know, it's. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I yield the floor back to. I've said enough.
Other comments or questions from members? Katie?
I have a question. Bonnie, it seems to me there's really not going to be an alternative but to cancel most or all of them. Have you talked with any other towns about alternative programs for whether it's kid concerts or the adult concerts, just some alternative entertainment or music that maybe creatively people are thinking about to provide some kind of enjoyment for residents during the summer months, even if we do have to cancel the entire schedule?
right, are you speaking virtually, like virtually holding concerts?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, yeah. The difficulty that I'll have there is finding a sponsor. That usually most of our concerts are attended by the sponsor, and it's an opportunity for the sponsor to come out and meet, with the people and, come out and shake hands and say hello. So I think my difficulty only, not that I would mind reaching out to them for it, my difficulty would be getting sponsors for virtual concerts.
Okay.
Other comments or questions from members? Ms. Collins?
Well, I had the same question, and I'm not sure how we might be able to help you with sponsors, but perhaps I like the idea of maybe seeing what other towns that are normally do concerts are doing, but perhaps there's a possibility of asking the sponsor to record something that would an opening for the concert that could then be dovetailed. That would be something we'd have to talk to Mike Lynch about, but just a thought. But of course we want it to actually reach people too. It wouldn't, especially something like the children's concert, so we'd need to publicize it and things like that.
So, my view is similar to Richard's. I don't think there's any way we can do anything. My view is I don't think we can do anything in June or July. And then I would say that August is probably at risk, but I would hold out hope for August. This is my view. Bonnie, I guess the question is if we have some kind of alternative, or if we may be able to do something in August, what kind of lead time do you think you need for publicizing it?
Lead time, I mean, obviously with social media, you can put it right out there. I don't think that takes too long. As far as that goes, it's time for reaching out to the sponsors is probably where it's most important, where I need the most time, and to set it up, the way it would be presented, so
Okay.
I don't think it would take too long.
Okay. I'm trying to get a sense of when we would need to make a decision for August. How long we could wait before we see what the situation is.
Well, I've already talked to some of the bands that I already had scheduled for June, and they pretty much realized that it wasn't going to probably take place in June. So we're already talking about late July, August anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that won't be an issue for them. But as far as like if we did a virtual, will we be filming it in the gazebo, possibly, and then having the sponsor maybe say something there?
Yeah.
It's an idea.
Yeah.
We can try it. I can certainly see if that might work for some.
Okay. I think that makes good sense to look into that, and then we'll I guess hold out hope that maybe we can do something in August, unless someone has a different view, unless any of the members have a different view.
Yeah, I had thought about doing that at the gazebo, and I think that we just need to consider that it may be difficult to keep people from attending. if they hear that there's live music and just the curiosity factor may bring people out, but it might not. I don't know. That's just something to think about.
Richard,
Bonnie, I think just any virtual entertainment programs, especially for kids, that you and the park commissioners can think about, or even passive recreation that we may not be doing now that we can do during the summer months, I think would be helpful, especially to parents who have already had kids in lockdown for weeks. And whatever we can do to think creatively and try with some kind of programming for kids, especially for the summertime. I was on that same call that Mike Dennehy mentioned, where the Lieutenant Governor said they're still working on guidance for camps. So that's still a very big open question right now as to what you can do for the summer camp program. But leaving that aside, just any virtual programming or something that won't involve large congregations of people, I'm sure residents would appreciate any creative thought you and the commissioners can give to that.
Sure, definitely. We already do a post every day on our Facebook page, noting some type of activity or YouTube craft or whatnot, giving suggestions every day, for something to do. We're trying to encourage more followers. So if people out there want to join us on our Facebook page, please do. Milton Parks and Rec.
So Bonnie,
Sure.
Mr. Wells. Yeah,
No, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Bonnie, I don't know if you could see or not the real-time chat that Mike Lynch from MPEG is willing to help out. So you can reach out to him to talk about both messaging and perhaps developing content. So, Richard.
Okay, excellent.
So just a couple of points, just final points. Just one to Katie's point. I mean, and Bonnie knows this. I mean, many musicians on the Boston music scene, this is their livelihood. It's how they make their living. It's all they do. It's the same issue that the MAC is having. Many of the musicians who play there, that's what they do. There's so many virtual sites. I don't know if any of you saw a Chronicle the other night, especially did on a famous musical landmark Club Passim, how they're keeping that going through virtual. But my last thought to you, Bonnie, is I'm with Michael. I think anything in June or July is too soon, but maybe toward August, maybe we have to change the venue. Maybe go to one of your parks, or maybe in Brooksfield or the schools. Go on where you've got a bigger footprint where you can really kind of let them help with the social distancing, if that's still where we're at, which I think we will be in August. I just think it's a way to salvage some of the summer. I do agree, as Melinda said, and I've said this many times, all we need the temperatures to hit 70 and people are going to start to move. It's just, they've been cooped up for going on 9 weeks now. It's hard. So that's just my last thought, is that maybe a different venue that's a bigger footprint that could allow you to like ensure social distancing and kind of, just a thought.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Thanks for everything you do on it. I know it's a lot of work for you every summer.
Well, thank you for having me.
Bonnie, did you get some clarity about what we've said? Is there?
So I think I'm going to reach out, and get a feel for the virtual, and maybe speak with Mike Lynch in regards to that, what we could possibly do. If that doesn't seem to, like it's going to work out, or for whatever reason, we'll just look at August, and then we'll make a decision about August when we get a little bit closer.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Item 4D, update on rent assistance. Is this Ms. Collins or Mr. Dennehy are going to take this?
It's probably me.
Okay.
Just to let you know that the planning department and myself attended a virtual meeting for home funds, which are federal block grants that are given out. And we belong to a consortium that's Braintree, Quincy, Holbrook. And there is a possibility of the consortium doing a rent assistance program. So last night, the Affordable Housing Trustees and the Housing Committee members voted to support that the planning board continue to work with the consortium to set something up. And there would be an agency, NeighborWorks or Metro West, that would help with that. They would be the administrator, and so all of that would be taken care of. So that's the latest on that.
Okay, all right. Any other comments or questions on that? moving on, item 4D, we have this, the taxi grant proposal or notice of opportunity from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Mike Dennehy, is this for you to tee up, or perhaps Hillary, or what do we need to decide here?
Is this the taxi licenses?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes, the grants. Taxi cab livery and Hackney partnership grants.
Okay. Can we defer that
Sure,
possibly?
sure.
Yeah, it's not quite big.
All
I
right.
apologize.
No, not at all. Item 5, discussion of the Milton Road Race. And just before we get there, we're trying to move along here quickly tonight. I meant to mention at the beginning, we have a hard stop at 7:20 tonight because the estimable Board of Appeals is meeting at 7:30 on this platform. So we're trying to move along so we get off by 7:20 so the Board of Appeals can get on at 7:30. So that's why we're trying to move as quickly as possible through some of these items. But not this one. Item 5 is the Milton Road Race, and we have Kelly Sia. Is it Sia or Asaya?
Sia. Thank
Sia,
you.
I thought so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'm joined with Bridget Gaffney and Stephanie Smith, both former and current race directors. And so thank you to the members for having us today. We just want to provide a short update so we can probably keep you right on schedule. We did send through a deck, and I don't know if it's possible to share it on the call.
Yes, we have it. And if
Okay.
let's ask Hillary. Hillary, can you share that Milton Road Race? Oh, she's trying. There she goes.
Oh, perfect. You got it. If you could just, yes, perfect. So what we want to share today is an update. This year would mark our 43rd annual Milton Road Race. So for 42 years, we've been doing this as an in-person race, and we have quickly pivoted, given the COVID circumstances, to a virtual race this year. So if you flip to the next slide, so the actual road race will not look anything like that picture that's on the first page. We're shifting. Many organizations across the country have actually moved their in-person races to virtual, and we gave a lot of thought to this. This is obviously a very special race in Milton. We typically have up to 800 runners each year in June. And we thought about postponing the race to sometime later, but then quickly decided we don't know what circumstances will look like in the future either. So we would rather conduct this race now, but move it to a virtual race. And why are we doing that? You probably know that this race has enabled many scholarships for high school students here in Milton, and we provide grants as well. And across those two, it's close to $20,000 that goes back into the community. So we view this as a really important fundraising event. And we are planning this year to do this. The concept is to run together, but be virtually and apart. So obviously we want to do this in line with Governor Baker's recommendations, only doing it with people you're quarantining with. But this is really, we felt it's really important because these are the fees that will, give back into provide, hope for the community, give some funding back into the community. And so we decided to go ahead with it in early June. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what we're asking people to register online. We have about 100 runners so far signed up. And there's a couple of ways people can actually sign up. It's directly on RaceWire or through Milton Junior Women's Club. We're now getting the communication into the Milton Times and through Facebook and other ways. But people can actually opt to run or walk a 5K or 10K anytime during the week of June 8th. The original session was, I think, planned for June 9th, but people have the option of running at any time of day and any time during that week, and you'll be recognizing that. It's a $20 registration, $30 if you include our t-shirts. Some of us are wearing our collector's items, Milton Road Race t-shirts, and so we're continuing that tradition for the race as well. If you flip to the next one, we just wanted to highlight some of the 2019 scholarship recipients. We typically have some of these folks speak at our actual road race and help us out, and we like to recognize them in those events. And so I think it's really important that we continue with that recognition as well. If you go to the next one.
I was just going to say, Kelly, unfortunately, the past few years we've had scholarship recipients come out and actually fire the starting gun for our races. So we won't be doing that this year, but it's a great way to kind of show everybody where their race fees are going to.
Good point, Bridget, thanks. We also want to highlight, we do have a number of sponsors this year, some folks that have continued to support this race year in and year out. And so these are some critical sponsors that we're dependent upon, and they've all signed up and been really gracious about it. And as you know, there's lots of volunteers that behind the scenes are working to make all this happen. This year we will still get shirts out to everyone, but we're not going to have these big tables, and we won't be getting together at Cunningham or starting the race all together. In the past we've had the local police and fire. We've been really thankful for everyone who's contributed. But the best way, if you flip to the last one, the best way everyone can contribute and help make this year's success is really signing up. Whether it's with families or individuals, or we have some teams that the Tucker team does it every single year and they're already raring to go. We have offered for those who don't want to run this year. We did offer a deferral for folks that wanted to postpone that to our race next year. But really, what the help we need probably is getting some of the word out. We have about 100 runners right now, and 800 has been our best year. But to the extent we can continue to get this communication out and encourage people to do it on their own pace. It's not a formal timed race. People could submit their own race online, but we really want to make sure that we're getting the word out so that we can drive this funding. Bridget or Steph, anything you think I might have missed in this update?
No, I think you covered a lot of things, Kelly. The other thing we've talked about, why we're doing this is just people love this race, and we have almost as many people come out and support the runners as we do runners usually. And so obviously not happening this year, but we've gotten some really positive feedback from folks for putting this on as a virtual event, saying, we're so thankful you're doing this just because we have something to look forward to. And it's one of those traditions that we can continue, despite all of the circumstances we're all living through right now. So I think we've gotten very positive response. Hopefully we can convert that into some additional runners over the next couple weeks.
Or walkers.
Or walkers, or teams, or anyone who's out there doing it anyway.
Yeah, so if you just go to the last slide. Yeah, the last slide. There you go. Yeah, we're just asking for any communication support we can get out there. The more we can get out, I think people will be excited to participate.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Stephanie. Questions or comments from the members? I think we're good. Richard.
I have one question, Mr. Chair, just one. So are you going to put your banners out like you normally would for the race, announcing that this is the way to Milton's Run Together, how to keep this going? Because I agree with you. Even the Pan Mass Challenge, which is the world's largest bike race in the world, they're doing it virtually because it's too important. So I hope that you'll come to Mr. Dennehy and put your banners up, whatever you can do, the things you would normally do to tell people about this. I hope we'll be able to be supportive of you on this.
Great. Yeah. Thanks. I think we're planning to put up some signs and everything. We realize we have to change our strategy a little bit because people aren't driving as much. So we're thinking about putting them out near some walking zones and things like that where people are out exercising.
Good idea. Yeah.
Ms. Collins.
Very good. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Melinda.
Oh no, I just I wondered if we could tweet it out to the hashtag Milton Runs Together. If we could put that on the town, just to help out Mr. Dennehy.
Certainly, yeah. And I know Jen McCullough has been working with the group to coordinate some of the valiant efforts that's going on. So
Okay.
Jen will continue to work with them, and certainly something we can put on the town's webpage and promote through social media.
Great.
Great. We really appreciate the support.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Thank you so
you.
much. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Stephanie. And this is great news. This is great news.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. All right, item 6, update Milton Police Quarterly Report. Is Chief King with us?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, Chief King.
Go ahead,
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, we can hear you.
I'll just give you a quick summary of what's going on at the police department. I'm always happy to answer questions. You know, a couple of non-COVID things. You know, we've had some minor personnel things. We hired 2 new cadets. We've had a bit of a shortage here we've been filling. So we hired 2 people, Molly Dillon and Jonathan DeVega. We do anticipate some retirements in the next, 2 years or so, we'll say, at both the patrol and the supervisory level. So there'll be some promotions, not in the immediate future, but, in the upcoming, say, 2 years or so, roughly. Some things we were working on unrelated to COVID, at the time that struck, we were doing some camera repairs. There was a lot of issues with cameras around town that had just become old and in need of repairs, and there had been some delays. So we were making good progress on upgrade repairs to that. We completed the 3rd phase of radio upgrades. That was a capital project from 3 years ago. The biggest project maybe on the horizon is the vendor for record management system, CAD system, which is our computer-aided dispatch and stuff, is essentially the company's kind of going under. They're not going to be supported. So we're probably going to have to endeavor. That's a system we got in 1992. So it's been here a long time, but we're going to have to look for a new one. That's a big project. It affects everything from booking prisoners to communications calls to, every incident report that's written. And there's a lot of, planning and training and stuff. So that's on the horizon. But other than that, everything really has been COVID dominated, unfortunately. It's dominating everything we do daily and kind of long-term planning. In some ways, there's less things we're dealing with. There's less community events, obviously, as you guys are talking about, gazebo concerts and road races and stuff being canceled. Our role in all those things is kind of down. Road races, school events, the Special Olympics are usually held in Milton Academy and canceled. We have not made a decision, but, in the back of our minds, we're making those same analysis that you guys are making on, we have a deer camp this summer. We have a national night out. We haven't made a final decision, but we do constantly keep planning and reevaluating that. Our calls for service generally are down. That really trend has not affected really domestic violence and mental health, substance abuse type of substance use disorder, mental health calls. Those are kind of steady. I wouldn't say increase, but I'd say they're steady. The most notable increase is really COVID type scams. There's a lot of people trying to take advantage of people at this time, a lot of them technology related. So that's kind of our call for service. The problem we're facing basically is, although our calls for service are generally down, some of the things we're doing are just taking far more time and energy than they used to. And, we're doing a lot of planning, and Lieutenant Caputo, as you all know, is our emergency director and has taken a lot of lead on that, planning stuff with our senior developments, the hospital. We're doing a lot of planning and changes here internally with staff and equipment. I mean, there's pretty much daily conference calls, video meetings we're doing with, staying up to speed on things like everyone from the, CDC to the Department of Public Health. I do them regularly with the chiefs of police, et cetera. But simple calls are taking longer. Sudden deaths has always been a part of our kind of routine, and they're more frequent than people realize. And, a lot of them are natural causes, but due to COVID, those calls take a lot longer. There's all new regulations from the medical examiner's office, the protocol, the time we spend on, what might be a natural cause death or an overdose death. Sometimes now is greatly exaggerated by several hours and a lot more steps. Prisoners, arrests are down overall because call volume's down, but when we are having arrests, same thing. There's all different measures. The staff wearing protective equipment. We transport them in certain vehicles and not others. The courts are closed. There's all different procedures on us having to arraign them, which usually leads to us holding them longer. Then there's issues of cleaning the cells and stuff in the vehicles after. So the simple kind of things we always dealt with are just a little more complicated, but overall the numbers are down. In terms of staff health, We've had 5 members tested. We only had to quarantine 1 of the 5. So that's good. We do see an uptick most recently, clearly weather related with, people complaining about social distancing or people not wearing masks. No particular hotspot that, we get them at the parks, we get them at the businesses. There's been some, people agitated, maybe get into disputes with each other about it. So we've seen an uptick in that. I've talked to, the Board of Health about that, and I know they've dealt with the same type of complaints. We are continuing, which I think is important at this time, although we've adjusted somewhat, a lot of our follow-ups, our outreach, we were doing that pretty regularly on mental health issues and substance use disorders and domestic violence. And we are still doing that. And, people have been responsive. Some of those mental health check-ins we've done remotely, and it actually went better than I would have expected, with some people I thought might be reluctant. But, Officer DiGiovanni checks in with people and calls them frequently. Some of them will, Zoom meet with her, and she's, checking in on a lot of people and having pretty good success with that. We have done house visits where needed, but, it's just slightly different now, in terms of what we wear and what we can engage in. In the future, just going forward, in the terms of the immediate future, as things open up, we expect a bit of a surge in calls for service. Obviously there'll be traffic and youth gatherings and things like that we fear might, uptick, and we'll have to deal with them. At the same time, we're still using all these precautions, and we'll have to balance both. But we're planning for that resurgence and a kind of an increase in calls for service. And then just small things, there's going to be a lot of catch up and planning and, logistics going forward. Like a lot of our required trainings, court cases got postponed. Quincy Court, which we use, has like a 4,000 case backlog currently. So while we're not doing those things now, we're going to have to make up, and those things are going to be put back on the docket, and we have to schedule officers and arrange evidence. Same with training, we got to still meet all the requirements of things that got postponed. So that's our long-term plan, but I'm more than happy to review anything specific.
Thank you, Chief. Questions or comments from the members? Richard, did you have something? I don't see anything. I don't see anyone else.
Mr. Chair, I have
That's Helen.
one while we're waiting for Richard. Chief, thank you very much for your report. And I sound like a broken record every time of year when we get to spring, but I appreciate your following up and doing whatever you can on the issue of the speed bikes and the motorcycles on the main roads, like Reedsdale Road where I live, but also Blue Hill Ave, Blue Hills Parkway, Randolph Avenue. It's a real problem in some of those neighborhoods. So I appreciate your doing what you can. I know that giving chase is presents all kinds of other public safety issues, but I appreciate whatever you can do on that front to alleviate some of the noise, but also the safety, given the number of people who are home now, working from home. There's a lot more people out for walks on any given day than normally would be on weekdays. So having the motorcyclists zipping up and down the street is a challenge, and it's a real public safety hazard for walkers and families with strollers and young kids that are out on the main roads on the sidewalks. And the second one, will be coming into it quickly enough, is the fireworks. And I know there's a limited amount that you can do, given that a lot of that happens over the border in Boston, and we hear the noise, but it's not actually happening within our jurisdictional confines. So as we get into June and July and we start hearing firecrackers at night, if whatever you can do working with Boston to alleviate some of that noise would be appreciated by many residents.
Absolutely. We'll stay on top of both of them. And they both are seasonal problems, and they are significant nuisances. Like you said, the first one, really both of them are safety, but they're certainly both like noise type nuisances. And they are a little more challenging. They sound like two simple offenses should be easy to cure, but they are a little challenging. Those motorcycles are a little tricky to deal with, but we have increased some enforcement in some targeted locations on that. And the fireworks, that's a very tricky one because it is in another jurisdiction, but we're more than happy to communicate with Boston and try and work with them and do whatever we can.
Thank you, Chief.
Other comments or questions from the members? Richard, you'd indicated you had something before. Do you have something on this? You're muted. There you go.
I'm here. I'm back.
Yep.
You just made me remember, Katie, how quiet it is that I don't live on Reedsdale Road after 20 years there. I've forgotten about the motorcycles.
I used to pester
thanks,
you
Chief.
for those for the first few years, Rich.
Oh God, it's tough. It is. It's a very tough. It's a very organized. It's just. No, I know what the chief said, and it's tough because you're weighing public safety versus enforcement versus, putting the general safety at risk, trying to chase them when they don't want to stop. So just two things, both COVID related. The first one, a resident email, Caroline, I forwarded to you today, Chief, on was from the town of Wellfleet had put out, and you are correct. You wrote right back to me on it. We have a very high elderly population here, and the scams are going to be big because you've got a governor telling people to answer the phone. You've got money coming out. You've got testing. So and many of our seniors, particularly in as you know, in like Fuller, Winter, Unquity, they're living in almost in isolation right now. So I know you're on top of that. So that's a good thing. And I think whatever you need us to do as far as getting it out, getting it to the COA, Christine, I think that's something we're going to have to stay on top of because that's going to be around for the summer. And the second one, Mr. Denny, if you want, you can forward it to the board. I copied the chief on a letter that I wrote to Caroline on, when did I write it, Chief? Earlier in the week. I copied you on it, relative to the statute that the governor and the CMR the governor utilized on the $300 fine. As the chief noted, he's living in a time now where compassionate policing has to be forefront as much as it can. The less people in jail, the better off you are if you can do it. But my concern is as the summer goes on, the $300 fine is, as you know, Chief, just one tool in the toolbox. And particularly if we get to the repeat offender, or every day you read of egregious situations happen with this, I'd rather that you have it if you need it versus not have it and then have to chase it, or them actually, because especially if they call you to help them for something which the governor alluded and wrote about, what are you going to do if you don't have anything punitive that you can use? So I did write to my colleagues as the chief and Mr. Denny, I did write a letter outlining why I felt that they should go back and relook at that. Not as that it's the thing that you lead with, but it's a tool you should have in the toolbox, given we're going to be in this for the whole summer. Thanks. That's all I have. Thanks, Chief.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Mike, can I just respond briefly to that? Just on the two things, just scams, I agree with him, and he forwarded me some today from the Cape. But yeah, I mentioned that in my review too. Like scams is definitely up, and we put out some stuff on our social media going back a few weeks on this, and Officer Mandeville, who's our elderly affairs officer, we have her try and get it to obviously some of that population's not on social media, but that's legit. And I think even just us talking about it, every time we mention it, we get awareness, because if not to them directly, their family members, and then hopefully their kids and grandkids are relaying that to them. But, the government doesn't text, call and email people really, you know what I mean? They send real letters in the mail. So I always feel the basic advice, if you didn't initiate it, assume it's fraudulent. You know what I mean? So those scams, we definitely are going to keep getting that message out. That has been something that's been growing, and not just here, but consistently. And the mask, I know we talked about it, we had that email, and I'm not a health expert, so I respect whatever people, but I understand your point about a tool, and I accept whatever avenue that the town wants to do. We're a good department in the sense we tend to de-escalate and work with people and educate them before. But I understand your point of, you got to sometimes go a little stricter for the good of all. So, I welcome guidance from anyone, and we'll do whatever we have to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the report. Let us know as we go forward if there's anything else that you need that we can help with, that is specific or general. And thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Chief King. Thanks.
All right. Item 7, update on the Boston Milton collaboration on the United Way Donor Fund. Last week, we had a discussion with the several representatives of MICA, the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association and Courageous Conversations for Racial Justice about a combined United Way fund that would, in which Milton would partner with its neighbors in Mattapan, Dorchester, and Hyde Park for a fund to raise money for those in need during this crisis. It's been proposed to be called the Neponset Neighbors Together Fund. Since last week, we've had the input from Councillor Andrea Campbell's office, and Councillor Andrea Campbell, who represents Dorchester and Mattapan. She and her office are very enthusiastic about this partnership, and they have brought in Councillor Ricardo Arroyo, who represents Hyde Park, and I believe the other part of Mattapan, and his office. He are apparently very enthusiastic about this. The proposal is that the funds that are raised through this web page and this outreach would be used to support residents in Milton, Mattapan, Hyde Park, and Dorchester, and also employees of Milton-based and the Ponce area businesses who were impacted by COVID-19. And this fund would be administered by the United Way and distributed to nonprofits in the area and to the individuals who need the help. And so we have a workup for a plan that has been presented, and the members may not have had time to really review all of this, but we do have an implementation plan. We also have a mock-up of a donor webpage that I sent around just this afternoon that looks very good to me, but I'm certainly no expert in this. We also have a 7-page legal agreement that would be between Milton and Boston, Councillor Andrea Campbell and Councillor Ricardo Arroyo, and the United Way. This agreement has just gone to it's a 7-page agreement. It's just gone to our council. It is going to require us to really vet it. There are some obligations here that Town Council is flagging. We're going to try to get on that tomorrow to see what we can do and what we may propose in the alternative if we need to. But that is where it sits right now. I think it is moving forward pretty fast, and but for the legal agreement, I think we'd probably seek approval for it tonight, but we haven't had time to really have the legal agreement vetted. So with that framing, comments or questions from the members?
Well, I didn't see the mock-up. I did see the reference to the page, Dedham's page, but I doesn't appear to be in my inbox, or I'm missing it buried in an email somewhere. So, but that wouldn't stop me from supporting it. I just wanted to note that. So.
Yeah, if I can share my screen, I can show you what 5 options of the web page look like, depending on what picture you all might like best. Sent a high school student who's a photographer and does the drone pictures to take pictures of the Harvest Bridge over the Neponset from Mattapan to Milton, which is an image that we love. We think it's very symbolic of what we're doing here. All of our neighbors live across the Neponset, and there's a lot of history with that bridge, even as young as it is there on the Greenway. So if I can share my screen, would that be a good way to?
Karen, I think that's great, although maybe since, that's something that we might kind of work out in the group and then present it when we have something final. We are a little bit pressed on time tonight, so I don't want to get too far into the details unless we need to at this point. But let me just find out if the members are generally in support of this, and so we can move forward. It's really, I think the long pole in the tent is probably the legal agreement frankly, that we're just going to have to work our way through, and that may take us, getting approval for that at the next meeting. Anyway, that's my thought. Other comments or questions from the members?
Just subject to town council vetting and giving us any comments on the MOU. I think the concept is fine, and hopefully we can move forward quickly on this. Thank you to everyone for all of your work and all of the contacts you're making.
Great.
And to the chair for bringing in the city councilors in Boston.
Mr. Chair, do you want to approve it tonight pending those two? Do you want a motion to approve it tonight pending final approval by town council, final recommendations from town council?
I hesitate to
Okay, all right, I'm fine.
just to approve a contract blind, because it's something I think that the members, I don't think we can approve a contract blind. I think we need to get that worked out, and he's gonna be giving feedback to the town administrator, and I'm gonna get on with him at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So we're gonna
Okay, that's good.
try to move on this, but that really, as you said, I think everything else makes sense. The only thing I'll mention is that in the implementation plan that's been circulated, I am designated as the lead on this for Milton. I'm happy to do it, but I don't know if I'm the most. I don't know if I'm the best person to do it. I know, Katie Conlon obviously was the one who drove this initially, and getting the page initially, and I know Melinda's been very involved in this, and Richard, you have background in this, so I'm not trying to dish here, but if anyone might bring better skills to this, I'm happy to dish.
Mr. Chair, what do you mean by the lead? Because I was thinking the town administrator probably is the one who could administer this program on the town's end.
It may be right. That may be right, Katie. This is just in the implementation plan that Karen circulated. It had me designated as the lead, and it does have Mike as well. But maybe Mike or Mike's designee would be the lead on that.
I think that would be a good idea for the town administrator or his designee. I know Jen McCullough is doing a lot of work on this as well, but when Winchester suggested this to us, they indicated that the board approved it. It was involved initially, but then it was really the town administrator who was the contact person for most of this with the United Way. So I would think we could do something similar.
Okay.
I agree with Katie. I may have a conflict just in other things that I'm involved in.
Fair enough.
Finance, fiduciary, so I would opt not to. I'd be up more to support it than to be the designee. So I agree with Katie. If Mr. Denny and Jenna are, they'll get it done. So I'm all right with that.
Okay.
But I'm fine waiting. If you want to wait, thank you all. And I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, no, I think what we can say is that there is a consensus on the board, a unanimity on the board of support for this and approval. And I think we just need to kind of just get approval for this, the legal agreement. And I think we're there. I think we're there. So, we'll get, town council has it, he's reviewing it, and we'll get approval for it. Our next meeting is next week, but if we need to get, if we're ready to go and that's what's holding anything up, maybe we'll have a short meeting just to approve the agreement before next week.
Right, it only requires 3 of us, if that's.
Yeah, I agree.
That's right.
That's a good idea, Melinda. If we have to have an emergency meeting, just call me and we'll do it.
Right.
Yeah, can I just say too about the lead, if for any towns that we've been working in, there typically has been a select board member, doesn't have to be, but it just helps. I think, you've been our point people all along. Melinda's been deep in the process even before we got to the select board presentation. So you decide on that, just it's been part of the form that we've had with other towns.
Okay. That's great, and that doesn't mean, Karen, that you don't need to, you don't include us in all the emails, and we'll keep it moving and put our shoulder to the wheel and do everything we need to do. We just want to I just want to make sure that that people who may have more experience than me on this are directly involved.
Great.
I would just
One of
like
the
to,
things I wanted to make a point of, one of my colleagues, Merrill Davidson, is on the call, and he's also a Milton resident that works at United Way, and he's in fundraising and will lead a philanthropy fundraising effort to make sure we have a hearty and strong fund.
Great.
So thanks for being on the call, Merrill.
Thank you.
and I'd just like to say that it's been incredible the way you put shoulder to the wheel, as you say, Mike Zulus, and Katie Conlon came on, and the very impressive collaboration with Boston government. It really, I mean, you really have put a lot of energy in this, and thank you.
Well, certainly not nearly as much as you all have. So, so thank you, and we'll get this off the ground. We'll get this off the ground. All right. All right. So, if that's all, thank you all, and we'll work our way through the agreement and see if we can get there on that, and off we go. Item 8 is our Traffic Mitigation Committee. We have our final report, and I don't, let's see who we have. I think we have Mr. Mullen, and not sure if we have some people dialing in. Mike Dennehy, do we know who else is going to be on besides Jeff Mullen?
This is Tracy Dyke-Redmond. I'm also on.
Tracy Dyke-Redmond, Bill Clark. I don't see Dick Burke, but Dick
Burke is on.
Yeah. Hi, Dick. How are you? Lieutenant
Michael.
Albo is going to join us. I'm not sure.
I'm here, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're here, led by our fearless leader.
All right. So that's great. So let's see. Jeff, I didn't mention, or I did mention before you were on the line, there is a very estimable group that is taking over this platform at 7:30 tonight called the Board of Appeals. So we're trying to move as expeditiously as we can, but we don't want to short shrift the Traffic Mitigation Committee. But we do have that deadline of 7:30 tonight, so the Board of Appeals can take over our Zoom. So with that, should we start with Mike Dennehy or the chair, Mr. Mullen?
I can introduce Mr. Mullen and the group that's here with us tonight. Chair Zulus, thank you. Again, this is the final report of the Traffic Mitigation Committee, which was born out of an idea that you had, Mr. Chair, some time ago. I will qualify that it's probably one of the most successful committees that I've been a part of in Milton, and quite honestly, probably a part of my 25 plus years in government. We do have some deliverables. We do have some work to do. Obviously, I'll leave the report to the chair and all the time and effort that himself and Tracy Dyke-Redmond had spent putting it together. It's very thorough. I think there's some very good findings that will come out of it, and some things we've done along the way, which I can point out. But I'll turn it over to the chair, and we can take it from there. Mr. Mullen?
Thanks, Mike. Members of the board, it's good to see you all. And I don't want to get in the way of the Board of Appeals, so I'll make my remarks brief. I first want to thank the members of the Board of Selectmen for letting me, and I speak on behalf of my fellow committee members, for serving the town in this capacity. Interesting, important issue, certainly more important in February than it became in March when we saw the decline in traffic, and that's something I'd like to address, but nevertheless an important issue. I know that the members have introduced themselves, but I'd like if we could, at the end of my remarks, just offer an opportunity for the members to make a comment to the board about their own impressions, and then I'll just hit on the highlights of what we've done. So we came in front of you in January with a draft report and a recommendation that you solicit additional public comment, which you did. Thank you for doing that. We got maybe 10 or so comments. I would say in the main, the vast majority of the comments just thanking the town for doing this, making observations that speed is an issue, and that people, the people who've participated in this process overwhelmingly have felt that speed is a larger issue than congestion. That's probably not surprising since the people who are commenting on it are people who live in this town, as opposed to people who are going through this town to get to someplace else and are frustrated with congestion. So it's just human nature. Of the comments that we received, were some specific actions. A woman who lived on School Street requested that we recommend that traffic be limited on School Street if there's a light to be put in at Adams, Randolph, and Canton Avenue, which is something that the Milton Planning Implementation Committee has recommended, and we recommended that as well. So the thought is it's going to back up in going northbound in the morning and heading southbound in the afternoon. And they didn't want people cutting through School Street. We thought that was a good recommendation, and we thought that was something that should be considered. There's another comment about implementing MBTA street parking on public ways in the town of Milton to leverage trolley, additional boardings in the trolley. This is actually something that the MBTA has done. With the one case that I can think of is in the town of Westboro, where a public way is being used as an MBTA parking lot. I don't think the idea should be completely discounted, but there'll be a lot of disruption with doing that. And I think the idea has some merit to be thought through, but it really needs some additional work before we could make any recommendation, just given the impact on the business community in Central Ave or in the village and the residential community through Valley Road, Capon Street, et cetera. It's just being probably too disruptive. Right now, you've really got 2-hour parking there. And one of the comments we got on trolley riding was, it's difficult to ride the trolley if you don't live near the trolley because it's hard to get there and there's no parking. Our recommendation there was to start to leverage some bicycle infrastructure. So that's out there. We did not endorse that. And the last comment was just a reiteration of the issues that are in the report, as I said. The other change to the report are 2 other changes I'll note. The first is we added support for the Shade Tree Advisory Committee. It so happened that the night that we were there, the Shade Tree Advisory Committee came before us, and I thought their presentation was terrific. And the more that we looked into that, we realized that shade trees and traffic mitigation go together. In fact, that was one of their findings. I think it will have a calming effect on the town streets. I think it's very consistent with Vision Zero. This is not conventional thinking. For years, highway planners felt like trees would just cause fatalities because people ran into them. But I think the better and the more scientific knowledge is that they actually calm the streets and they have people feeling different while they're using the roadways. It's very consistent with our overall recommendation that traffic is a culture issue. So we would encourage you to keep with the Shade Tree program. I think it's been terrific. I think the town has benefited greatly, and I think the committee's done a great job. And the last is we added a COVID-19 postscript to the report. So today we see almost no congestion, actually, frankly, anywhere in America, although, that's increasing, as Secretary Pollack has pointed out. It won't always be that way. And while it's too early to predict what's going to happen with congestion, it could be that we're back to the massive congestion we saw. That will be tempered by a couple of things. One is, my guess is people are going to telecommute more, and it will be a while before we get back, if ever, to the same kind of density we saw in the central city. But at the same time, I'm concerned that people will leave public transportation out of a concern that they won't be able to socially distance themselves. And these are in conflict. So our recommendation is it's something that needs to be constantly monitored. And you probably need to reassess it once the main impact of the COVID-19 pandemic are truly known. And every community is grappling with the same issue, but there is no clear answer. Finally, the report is done, but the work is really just beginning. And I see a massive implementation effort to really do this. And I know that the town is committed to it, but we'll just remind you that there's a lot of implementation, and we've recommended that you task the town administrator who likes roads and streets and buses and trains and cars and things like that. We know from his background, and he's very capable. So that's our report. That's a summary, and thank you very much for our opportunity to serve the town. If I could, Mr. Chairman, just invite the members, including yourself, to make comments, but I'll leave the agenda to you.
No, please. So why don't we go down the line? First, Tracy Dyke Redmond.
I just want to echo the thanks for the opportunity to work on this issue. I think it's a really important and longstanding issue, and I think we saw a lot of interest from residents of the town, a lot of comments along the way, and good ideas. I just would, encourage the town to continue to focus on this, even though we're in a state right now where it may not seem as pressing. There are many, many things that we can do to improve safety and, reduce fatalities, reduce injuries over the long term. So I encourage the town to continue to work on that. That's all.
Thank you, Tracy. Lieutenant Alba, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just quickly, I just want the town to know that, enforcement was a huge part of it. The police department, myself included, did hear the citizens. It didn't fall on deaf ears. We have put measures in place. We have a traffic officer now assigned to do a dedicated assignment. We integrated electronic citation so that we have made strides in the police department. And I just would like everyone to know that we did listen to all the comments, all the townspeople, and we are reacting to it, and we're going to take a proactive look at things as well. And I appreciate all the work that was done on this committee, and it was a pleasure working with all.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Bill Clark, do you have anything to add?
I do want to thank the rest of the committee. There was some excellent efforts in there. I do believe that traffic is going to be a more important issue as we move forward, just because of what we've been through in the last 2 months. I think you're going to see, as Mr. Mullen said, you're going to find more people on the road than in the public transportation, because I think they're going to be a little bit afraid for a while due to that social distancing. So I think some of our issues are going to be spot on. I have one thank you to our unofficial member, Lee Toma, who showed up every Friday morning for this committee. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mike Dennehy, comments, adds, thoughts? Mike, are you there?
I am, yes. Yeah. There's a couple things, as the chair said, a lot of work has been done, but the real work needs to get started. And I know you're going to touch upon one of the changes, I think, that's going to take place in Milton town government to do that. But along the way, to Tracy and Chair Mullins and Bill Clark and Mark Alba, we did hear the people. I think the wiki map that went out was a great chance for constituent engagement. The worst thing that can happen with constituent engagement is when you don't reciprocate. And I think we've done that. We have a pretty good track record. The Public Works Department and the Police Department have been very responsive. There were several cases of don't block the boxes that we heard about. Wood Street at Granite Ave and Adams Street at Wharf Street in particular. We identified those. We put safety measures in place. We moved some parking spots around town that had come up. Some on Bassett Street that went through the Traffic Commission, as well as another 2 on Adams Street as you approach Wharf. And again, I'm not going to capture everything, but this is just some of the stuff that we heard and followed through on. Some of this is man hours, and some of this is man hours plus materials. So we made a conscious effort to take the money that came from the governor's share ride initiative, and we invested in flashing pedestrian crossing signs and some more flashing stop signs. They're portable. We've moved them around town based on constituents' asks. We installed some audible pedestrian signals, most notably on Adams Street at Elliott, as you cross over and try to access the trolley line there, as well as the major intersection where the library meets Center Street and Reedsdale. So very recently, we've heard a lot of, this one can be put in 2 categories, both public safety and traffic mitigation. The lights along Canton Avenue, we spent some money to invest and more recently put a left turn phase on both approaches on Canton Avenue as recently as Monday. So now when you approach Unquity or Blue Hills Parkway on Canton Avenue, both north and south, you'll get that left turn phase. It was a very dangerous intersection without that left turn phase, and it did cause backup into neighborhoods, which ultimately leads to further cut through traffic. So anything from repainting crosswalks or to identifying other locations in town. And I think the one thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight is all modes of travel are on the table. The chair mentioned conversations with the T, and myself and Chair Zulus and Senator Timilty went in to talk to Steve Poftak, and bike infrastructure is something that's on their radar. We did talk about pedestrian, a lot of pedestrian safety had come in through Wikimaps. We are addressing those, and then obviously bicycle and vehicular traffic. So very proud to be part of this. I think a lot of work yet to be done. Just wondering if Mr. Burke or any of the other members have anything to add, but
well,
great work, and you have my committed effort to continue.
At last, but certainly never least, Dick Burke.
Thank you, Michael. I don't think there was ever a secret that traffic is one of the top 2 or 3 issues you hear relative to Milton all the time. And this was I was very glad to be part of it. I learned something new every meeting. Sometimes you think you know a lot, but after sitting through some of the presentations made by our guests, but also the members of the committee, I learned a tremendous amount. What I was concerned about at the outset was that this was going to be an esoteric academic exercise that was going to sit on the shelf. That fear was allayed very, very quickly as we worked our way through from perceptions to the facts down to the deliverables we have right now. And as we all know that politics and government is all local. If you can address and give people the idea that at least you're acknowledging that there's a problem, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is the implementation, as Mike Dennehy just mentioned. We have a good start. We have a blueprint of what we think needs to be addressed. We think we know what has to be done, but I'm sure we'll know a lot more going forward. And in summary, I'd just like to say thanks for everyone for putting up with me in all these meetings. I'm not in the best humor early in the morning, and what a great job done by Chair Mullen, as well as the help that the town people, Mike Dennehy, Billy Clark, and Lieutenant Alva, brought to the table, and of course Tracy. And it was always great to work with good people who want what's best for the town. So once again, thanks for the opportunity to participate.
Well, if you weren't always the best humored, you were certainly always the best dressed, Dick. In the morning.
Michael, you're a hard person to follow. You know that, right? in all ways.
The only thing. Thank you for that. The only thing that I'll add is 2 points that I think we need to address quickly, and that is as quick as possible, and that is reconstituting the Traffic Commission in accordance with the recommendations of the report. And then the traffic modeling. We'll have traffic modeling software, and that will allow us to try to identify problems and potentially solutions. And then, as Mr. Mullen pointed out, having Mr. Dennehy ride herd on the other recommendations in the report, I think that does give us a good model for making sure that this doesn't just sit on the shelf. So, with that, questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair, I just like to thank this committee, which was truly a first-rate committee, for a first-rate report. This is a terrific report, very practical, comprehensive, thoughtful, and I just want to thank you all for all of your input. This is hopefully it's going to take some time to implement some of these measures, but it's going to make a difference in people's lives. So thank you.
Other comments or questions from the members? Ms. Collins.
Mr. Chair.
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, no, let Richard go first.
Go ahead, Richard.
No, I just want to echo Katie's comments. Having been chair of the Traffic Commission for 10 years, traffic is a tough thing here. The only thing that I'm really surprised at Chair Mullen that he didn't address is the most contemporaneous issue addressing the town of Milton today, which is the devastating queue at the front door of the Milton Marketplace that extends all the way out to Bassett Street every day. I'm surprised I didn't hear a recommendation for that, but you have to have humor even in the darkest of days. So thank you, it was a great job. I'm very appreciative of it.
Ms. Collins.
I want to echo what Katie and Richard said, and also to say an extra special appreciation for the modeling of how an excellent committee works. That housing production plan team, I think, watched you and tried to emulate some of what you did. And also, I really appreciate some of the effort to go back and to not just stop at where the report was in January, and to do some of that out of the box thinking, because the Shade Tree Advisory Committee is another excellent committee doing work. And I just really applaud that you were observant and looked at that and made that connection. But I would expect nothing less, actually. But thank you.
Do I have a motion to accept the report?
I'll move that we
Chair, I'll
accept the
make a motion to
report.
accept it. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Mr. Mullen, anything final now that we've tied up the bow and we've got it all finished?
No, you know, if you have questions, you know where I am. Usually at the Board of Appeals. So I'm happy to help, and you know, I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, and thank you to everyone. Thank you to Tracy, thank you to Dick, thank you to Lieutenant Alva, Bill Clark, and certainly Mike Denny. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, update on the East Milton deck project. Mike, is this going to go through you or right to Chase Berkeley?
We can go right to Chase Berkeley. I can lead in a little bit by stating that good transition from the Traffic Mitigation Committee to the East Milton deck is this is one of the projects that's been in the pipeline for quite some time. It was an abundance of the requests that we got was the traffic problems and pedestrian problems that were located in the square. This project, along with other MassDOT and DCR projects, are in the pipeline, and Chase can give you the details on this one. I was remiss in not mentioning that in our partnership with MassDOT over the last year and through the Traffic Mitigation Committee and some of the relationships we've formed with MassDOT, we've actually, and with the help of our state electeds, Rep. Driscoll and Senator Timmerly, we've been able to get the Route 28 corridor study underway much sooner than expected. So the voices from the people and from our state electeds and this board really resounded with MassDOT, and they've expedited that that corridor study, which will run from Chick and not at the intersection of, because that's a separate project, but it'll run all the way down through to Brook Road and try to figure out how to fix that highway, if you will, as it stands. So, but I will pass it over to Mr. Berkeley and let the public know that there are other major public works projects underway in our town to help mitigate both public safety and traffic calming measures. Chase?
Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So I'd like to give you a quick update on where the East Milton Square deck project is. So bids were received back in March 24th. That bid was actually delayed a couple of times because of permitting issues with the MWA and the complicated infrastructure under the deck, but it was all worked out and we received bids, or the state received bids on March 24th. The low bid came in at $6.85 million. McKay Construction was the low bidder. If that name sounds familiar, McKay is the contractor that constructed the Martin Richard Park beside the Boston Children's Museum. So they're no stranger to high profile work and complicated, heavy civil construction. So we're happy to see that they won the bid, fully capable, and came recommended by Howard Stein Hudson from experience with previous projects with them. So part of the big question mark we had, seeing that bid come in so much higher, the estimate for the job was $4.2 million. The lowest bid came in at 6.8, and then the next two, 7.1 and 9.1, tells us that the bidding climate at that time was advantageous to contractors, and the prices were just coming in high. We've actually seen that trend shift drastically since the COVID crisis has hit, but at that time, those prices came in much higher than we had hoped. However, Howard Stein Hudson does a thorough analysis of the bid received, and was able to justify that the numbers did make sense. There wasn't anything skewed beyond anything reasonable. So they did recommend award to McKay Construction of the project, and that has gone through all the steps to take it to the highway administrator's office at this point. So it's not completely executed, but it's certainly passing third base, heading towards home. It will require a vote of the board, from the MassDOT board, to ratify it, and they've been meeting regularly every 2 weeks. So we expect that to happen. The MassDOT procurement process is about 45 days from the time of bid to the time of award. So it is a little bit stretched out, but we're heading in the right direction, and hopefully have some good news soon that it's been completely executed. And once it's executed, there'll be, you won't see construction activity immediately. There's a series of submittals that need to take place where the contractor will submit their materials and specifications, and the engineers will review them and approve them, and then you'll start to see more and more activity. So I would say we should expect to see construction this summer begin.
Comments or questions? Thank you, Chase. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Comments or questions from the members?
Mr. Chair, this might be more of a question for you. Where are we at on the air rights amendment? Is that still something that's under negotiation with
I'm gonna have to go back and
council?
see where we are on that. There were negotiations going on with DOT on that.
Mr. Chair, if I might, Chase and Kevin and I had a brief conversation on that today. Chase or Kevin, do you want to brief the board where we are on that?
Yeah, so there was, oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Thanks, Chase. Yes, Mr. Chair, Chase and I have had a couple of email conversations out with Mass DOT, and this morning we got some new language from them regarding sort of what they're looking for in terms of an agreement with the town if the town wishes to reopen Adams Street. So it was some positive communication back and forth with them, with Mass DOT today, and it's something that Chase and I are working on, and we'll have an update for you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Welch.
Chase, I just want to thank Chase. This has been a lot of work, and this was a football that got handed to you very quickly, not too long ago. So I just want to thank you and your staff for moving it forward. And as I've said, it's hard to believe 3 years on the board has already gone by, but this is critical to enhancing quality of life, not just in the square, but for those neighborhoods that abut the square, and for traffic flow and pedestrian safety and all of that. So thanks for that. I was worried when the bid came in, when I saw it was over. I didn't know what would happen, but I'm glad that it's going to move forward and it's still on schedule. So thank you very much for your attention to that. And just one final note, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah,
I know you started that MWA project we talked about up off of behind Town Hall, Fairmount, Walnut, all there. I know that's your big project for the year. Thanks for all the attention you and your staff have given to it. I know some of the neighbors have had some concerns, and I was there yesterday walking, and I saw you there personally. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we're certainly sensitive to what's going on in the world, and we're trying to make that product be as least invasive as possible. So thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank John Thompson, our town engineer, who's really doing the heavy lifting on the deck project. So I'd like to give him the kudos he deserves.
Any other comments or questions from the members? Thank you, Chase. To be continued. I guess we'll see once we get a shovel in the ground. Maybe we'll have you come back.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Item 10. Discussion of an appointment of a member of our board to the Fire Chief Selection Committee. Mr. Dennehy is putting together a committee for the selection of a new fire chief, and would like a member of our board to participate in that. And so I will suggest that I think this would be an ideal role for Mr. Farrington to play. It will fit within the schedule of his remaining time on the board. And even if it goes over, he can continue to play the role. And he has told me, he's unable to be on the line tonight, but he has told me that he is interested in the appointment and would accept it. And so I think he would be a fine appointment. But comments or questions from members?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to see Tony serve in this capacity that he had. Glad to hear that he's willing to do that. And I'll make a motion that we appoint Tony Farrington to the Town Administrator's Fire Chief Selection Committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, this will be a roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulis, yes. Okay, item 11, approval of the annual town meeting warrant for our January 15th annual town meeting that we talked about earlier. Are we in a position to approve that? I know we've got to get it off to the printer pretty quickly. And so are we in a position to approve that this evening, or approve it subject to some maybe ministerial changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I might, there was some ministerial changes that will take place with the warrant committee on Friday.
Okay.
They are looking to add Council on Aging as a location for the electronic delivery of warrant Article 38. They'd like to specifically mention that copies be held on hand for Director Stanton and her staff to disseminate.
So that's the only change that we expect that the warrant committee will be asking for that change on Friday. I'll be recommending that change, I guess.
That's correct. Yep. Mr. Freitag, is there anything else that you know of? That's all to my knowledge.
That's correct, Mr. Dennehy. I've been working with Member Conlon on a few, perhaps slight additions to the recommendation, but it'll all come under what the warrant committee takes up on Friday, and I suspect that it'll be resolved at that time.
I have a question. I'm not sure who the right person is, whether this is Mike or Kevin. The last draft of the warrant that I saw had our usual references to the Milton High School auditorium. Are we addressing that to, we're uncertain right now on whether we're going to have a virtual meeting because the legislation is still pending. Are we going to leave that as it is, and then with the hope that we're going to later notify town meeting members it will be virtual, or are we designating a different location as maybe the field house as the fallback in case the virtual legislation does not pass in time?
Yes, so we did talk about that. Kevin, you can pick up where I leave off, but until we get that legislation ratified, we have to use the auditorium for the location. And we will, should the legislation pass successfully, we will have to supplement that. Or it may come in between the time we submit it and our edits are due, at which point we may be able to transcribe that on the warrant that is delivered.
Okay.
Did I say that correctly, Kevin?
Yes, you have to have a physical location for town meeting that's advertised, and it's traditionally done right along with the warrant. If that legislation passes, then, and depending on when it passes, we'll have some additional work and some additional notification. The timing of it will affect the type of notification. We might be able to change the warrant. If the warrant's already gone out, there'll be some additional notification that'll need to be sent.
Right. And that's covered in that legislation as it's written at the moment anyway, that's acknowledged that there would be that change and that the notification is sufficient.
Ms. Conlon.
So I think given the fact that time is short tonight and we're putting this warrant together with a warrant committee meeting still to be held on Friday and some real-time changes potentially being needed, I'll move that we approve the warrant for the June 15th, 2020 annual meeting subject to corrections or technical edits that may be required over the next week or two.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes, I'm fine. I just have one, just before we let Kevin go on this, I just have big concerns that if this isn't passed, I'm with Katie. I think we got a big, I think we were probably getting a quorum. We have to force this into the auditorium. I really do. I think people will be too hesitant to go in there. That something, if it, the field outside is preferable, but I think the field house is way more. I don't understand, Kevin. I mean, if a water pipe burst in there that night, an hour before the meeting, we couldn't have it in the auditorium, and we moved it to the field house. Are you saying that we'd have to cancel town meeting because we couldn't have it in the auditorium?
No, I think that's probably a question that's best answered by Bob Hiss, but he has, as town moderator, the ability to affect when town meeting were to go forward based on any emergencies that might take place. So in that hypothetical, he would be able to step in and continue town meeting. And in fact, there's even some thought that he'd be able to do that anyways if this legislation hasn't passed yet, and there's still concern about having the meeting at that time. He'd be able to continue it before the meeting on sort of a 30-day basis, is my understanding. Whether or not you want to have, just from the outset, the town meeting held in a different location than the auditorium, that's something you could consider. I don't know why you couldn't decide to have it someplace else. I don't know that the auditorium is the only place it could be held. Of course, subject to scheduling and coordination with the town administrator, I think would be the best way to handle it.
Okay. I thought you were saying, to Katie's point, I thought you were saying it had to be in the auditorium, so we couldn't move it to another place, and that's where I think if we try to force it in the auditorium, we're really going to have a problem. But you've answered it for me. I'm good. I'm good with that now. So I'm a yes, Mr. Chair. I'm a yes.
And I'm a yes as well. I will say this: we could, I suppose, we could say on the warrant, we could, as the placeholder for a place, put in the field house instead of the auditorium. I think the reality is, and again, Bob is on the line, he could speak to this, but I think the reality is, if the legislation doesn't pass, I don't think there's any way that we are meeting in person for our town meeting on June 15th. That's my own view. I think if the legislation doesn't pass, perhaps Bob extends the time until maybe the legislation does pass. But I don't think there's any way we're meeting in person on June 15th. But Bob, maybe you want to weigh in on this. That's just my own thought.
I think the only way you'd get members is if we did something outdoors, frankly.
I agree.
And that's a whole nother set of logistics.
Right.
There is an approach Brookline is following, which is, and I think Lexington as well, they are assuming they're going to hold a town meeting regardless of the legislation. They're going to do a virtual town meeting. And then I could get the specifics, perhaps Kevin can comment. They are then going to call a special town meeting or I think a special article to call for a ratification of the vote held at the virtual town meeting that would then have to get submitted, I think, to the legislature for approval. So they have locked and loaded on virtual town meeting legislation or not. But you'd have to have this other certification, I assume by the legislature or attorney general, that, by the way, we did something abnormal,
Yep.
and we need you to sign off.
You know, I have to say, in terms of the warrant, it may cause unnecessary concern and consternation if we distribute warrants that say that we're meeting in the auditorium.
I think you're right.
So I guess the question is there any way we can actually put on the warrants now that we're going to do it virtual, or you know, maybe put Brooks Field on the as the location. But I think if we put on the auditorium, I think it's a good point. I think it could create concern and confusion among people. So so Kevin, any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't want to screw the pooch right at the end here, but.
Well, like I said, and I'll defer to Bob Hiss on this because it's really his specialty. I don't think that there's anything in our bylaw or in state law that requires that the town meeting be held at the auditorium. I think that the select board could decide in conjunction with the moderator where to hold town meeting. And now I'm talking about physical places. So if you wanted to you could choose, subject to scheduling, wherever you would like to hold the town meeting, as long as it's able to accommodate town meeting, as we historically have seen it.
Yep.
I think then if you wanted to, and I just wanted to avoid any confusion, but you could perhaps have something in the first or second page of the warrant that lays out that the ideal situation would be to hold this meeting virtually, and perhaps provide maybe a short summary that just gives everyone some notice that we're waiting to see if the state passes some legislation that could affect the ability to hold this meeting virtually. And perhaps in that same section, Bob Hiss, and these comments probably would be best made by Bob Hiss, I would think, and perhaps also address our intentions or your intentions, Bob, to continue the meeting pursuant to statute if you feel that it's not safe and to hold a physical meeting if the virtual legislation hasn't passed. Something like that from you might be the answer here to give everyone an understanding of the town's sort of an intent and thinking on this issue.
So look,
I think we should note it right on. I think we should just note it right on the cover, because that's why I brought the point up. It was highlighted in yellow on the last version I saw, Milton High School Auditorium. I think we could put in, whether it's that location or another location, with an asterisk, maybe just stating something about the goal is to have, the intent is to have a virtual town meeting pending approval of legislation, pending passage of legislation. We could figure out the wording, but I think we should note that in the warrant.
I like, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I like the idea of putting it on the cover because some people with their busy lives don't open the warrant until it's much closer to the time. So I think that's a good idea as well.
Unless Kevin is saying that we absolutely need to have a place, and if Brookline is taking the view that they're not going to engage in this kind of false reality, that they're actually going to meet at a place, I would be in favor of saying, look, this is going to be a virtual town meeting, and just put it right on the beginning of the warrant and the details to follow. Is that something that Bob Hiss, would you disagree with that? And Kevin, is that somehow contrary to our bylaws? So Bob, maybe you first.
I would support that.
Okay. Kevin, I think, dropped off. Kevin, are you back? Kevin? I see his name. Kevin? Yeah, he's connecting. Hold on just 1 second.
I think, by the way, when I've read this, I think it's called Chapter 10 in the state law, the moderator can come right up to the edge of the meeting and say the time and location is inappropriate, regardless of the health emergency. So I can say, you're right, the auditorium's flooded, we're going to the field house. You can just do that.
Right.
So if we're going to announce it's going to be a virtual town meeting and we don't get the legislation and this committee's really uncomfortable going that legislature route, I can defer it 30 days. We can organize things in the football field, get everybody comfy, and call an audible when we get close.
Yep. So Kevin is connecting. Is there any disagreement among the members to just coming right out and saying we're going to have a virtual town meeting right in the front of the warrant?
No, I think that's fine.
All right. Kevin, are you with us?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I got kicked off.
I'm sorry. So Melinda and Richard, are you okay with that approach?
No, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I agree with the moderator 100%. I think he's been going them regardless of the legislation. I like even the Brookline idea. I think it's our greatest for the continuity of government and moving this town forward. I think it's our greatest likelihood of success right now.
So Kevin, what we'd like to do is dispense with this, again, false reality that we're going to have some kind of in-person meeting on June 15th and just put on the front of the warrant. It's going to be a remote participation town meeting with details to follow, something to that effect. Mm-hmm. Is any prohibition to us doing that?
Well, again, I'll defer to Bob, but my only concern would be that the state legislature does not pass the virtual town meeting legislation at all.
Well, then he'll exercise Chapter 10 and move it to and he'll probably defer it 30 days is what he'll do.
Right, and move it to a physical location or something along those lines.
Right.
Okay. I'll coordinate with Mr. Moderator tomorrow then and just shore up exactly, what we think is the best approach to note that right on the cover then.
Okay. All right, so,
You're good.
all right, good. Anything else on that? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Kevin. Item 12, special town meeting date. We had approved July 27th as a subsequent town meeting date for those additional items. The only thought here is that's a Monday, and during the summer, we might do better on a Tuesday. And so, and to Member Conlon's point that we should keep it to one night, maybe we want to go with July 28th instead of June 27th. So that's the purpose of this item.
You want that in a motion?
Well, yeah, comments or questions? Do people agree with this, or Melinda?
So I thought that was a good idea for people who are able to get away in some way or something else and need Monday. But now I'm thinking, okay, what if we do need to defer 30 days? And that puts us to July 15th. I guess we still have the special town meeting right after that. Okay.
Or we defer that one too.
Or right. Well, that was just a question, but we couldn't defer it anymore. The regular town meeting, we couldn't put that off any more than 30 days unless something happened July 5th, and then we had to push it up. So we couldn't really combine them in any way. That was the only thing that I was thinking about, because, gee, I kind of hate to have people come back twice in 1 month. But as you said, we could always defer it. So thank you.
Other comments or questions? Richard, I think you can make your motion.
Oh, yeah, you want a motion? Do you want a motion? I'll make a motion if you want a motion.
Yeah. If people are on board with it.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve July 28th, which is a Tuesday, 2020, as the date for the special town meeting.
I'll offer a friendly amendment just in place of July 27th.
Okay, that's fine. That's
Just
fine.
so it's clear to people, it's not 2 nights, it's 1 night.
My phone's already, is your phone blowing up? I've already got 2 texts in 5 minutes.
Friendly amendment has been accepted. Motion's been made. I don't know if we got a second before the friendly amendment.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 13, approval of the special town meeting warrant schedule. Mr. Dennehy, I don't know if you need to walk us through this, if there are any comments or questions from the members on this.
No, I just touched base with Hilly. It's kind of an aggressive schedule, but something that I think is attainable because we basically know what the articles are. Most of them have been written and discussed, so it's just a matter of getting them vetted into the printer. So I think most of the work has already been done on the articles that we're going to be presenting for special town meeting. So again, it's an aggressive schedule, but certainly achievable.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Jenny, I think that's the case that because the articles are already written and recommendations have already been drafted, this probably works. But normally I would prefer that we not give so much time at the printer, we do most of the edits before it goes to the printer. Right now, this is having us approve the warrant on June 10th, send it to the printer the next 2 days later, and then get the final changes on June 26th for a warrant to be in the homes on July 13th. I'd rather build in more time so that we have time before it goes to the printer rather than after. But given that we've already drafted these articles and recommendations, it probably works this time. I guess, when are we going to be putting out notice that we're opening the warrant? Because we're scheduled on this schedule to close it on June 3rd. We don't want to have a lot of time where it's open before we close it, because we don't want citizens petitions being filed. The intent, 1 night, largely planning board articles. So I think we need to think about when it's opened and when 3rd is the appropriate close. Are we going to be putting out notice this week?
So I guess the question, go ahead, Mr. Denny.
No, I was just, that's probably for the board's discussion. Yeah, but I'll do whatever. I understand Member Conlon's point. I think you need 100 signatures for a citizen's petition for the special. But yeah, to that point, we're limiting it to one night, and we've got, I think 9 articles that are being moved. I'll take your lead.
Well, I think we have to decide whether all 8 or 9 of them are going forward. I'm thinking we want to cut that down and not put them all forward in July. Because I do think Milton Village is going to take a fair amount of time to discuss. But so long as we're not encouraging, we want to discourage actively citizens petitions from being filed and let people know that what we're really looking to do is just move a handful of the articles from the annual to the special town meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Ms. Collins and then Mr. Wells.
Well,
Go ahead, Kate. Go ahead, Melinda.
Oh, thank you, Richard. In the chat, Bob has asked about if the printing article passed, do we still need to worry about that? And I believe the answer is we will still be printing about 500 copies. So
this is a bylaw change. It has to be approved by the Attorney General, so we won't have it approved in time.
So it won't even be then.
Unfortunately.
But just to talk about that though, we'll still be using a printer to print those 500 copies. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood what we were doing. Thank you.
Mr. Wells.
Yeah, so just, I talked to Chair Tagayas, reached out to me today, to the point Katie mentioned, that the Milton Village PUD is their biggest priority, and what they're proposing to do is to run a series of trainings, like webinars or Zoom meetings for town meetings leading up to the special town meeting to hopefully answer a lot of these questions so that the town meeting members will be way more informed when they get there because of the one night limitation. I think that's a good thing. No?
Yes, no, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
That's
Mr. Denny.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Wells, sorry.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
No, we need to advertise for 2 weeks for the reopening too, so we need to take that into account for our timetable. So I'm not sure when this board wants to open the warrant for special town meeting, but we need to keep that open for 2 weeks and advertise as such.
Why don't we open it at the next meeting? But I think with our discussion tonight, and we should emphasize it at the next meeting, we're not looking for more articles from boards or citizens. We're looking to make this a targeted special town meeting for the board. Mr. Chair, I'll move that we approve the schedule for the closing and production of the warrant for the July 8th, 2020 special town meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? It's a roll call
So I
vote.
just wanted to follow, just before we vote, so part of what Cheryl was talking about, given the whole COVID thing, the state of the economy, so there've been 2 recent passings of purchases of properties in the village recently. Both of the buyers have great interest in this change in the bylaw, the zoning bylaw, and taking advantage of it. Plus one existing that I think Katie's aware of is already there. So given the fact that we're trying to open up, Cheryl had a good point. She's fearful that someone buys this piece of property and then has to sit on it for another year, given the fiscal situation we're going into worldwide right now. So that's it. That's all I wanted to add to it. So I vote yes as well. So let's go.
Motion's been made and seconded. A roll call vote. Ms. Collins.
Yes.
Ms. Conlon.
Yes.
Mr. Wells.
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Item 14, update on the open meeting. We have 16 minutes. Update on an open meeting law complaint. We received an open meeting law complaint relative to our meeting on April 17th from Cindy Christensen. The complaint essentially, the complaint was that the public comment section had been moved from item 3 to item 5, and that the board had provided notice of that provided notice of the change 24 hours prior or the day prior, rather than 48 hours prior. The board has responded to that. The law is that the under the open meeting law, the board is required to provide notice of the time and the subject matters, but it is the province of the board to decide, and it can change the order of things that are discussed, and it can defer discussing things as well. And so the fact that the board noticed that change in writing and provided public notice of that change in writing the day before was actually more notice than is required under the public meeting law. So this board did more than was required by the open meeting law with respect to that. The meeting began at 12:04. Public comment began at 12:24, 24 minutes later than that. And the meeting ended at 1:06. And then the complaint was filed at 1:46 that day. Again, the response from the town is that the open meeting law does not require the board from removing, postponing, or declining to discuss a topic or from changing the order. And that the fact that we noticed that in public, we went above and beyond what was required. The request for remedy in this is that that the AG's office reprimand me for this change, and that the chair and the board apologize to the citizens of Milton, and that we not do this again, even though it's allowed by law. So that response has been made. The position of the board is that there has been no violation of the open meeting law. In fact, the board went above and beyond any requirement of the open meeting law with respect to that date. Item 50, any other comments or questions on that from the members? Okay, item 15, we are running out of time.
Mr. Chair, why don't we defer? Want to defer tonight, item 15? Want to defer that to a later meeting?
Let's defer that because we only have 13 minutes. Discussion approval of the timing for item 16, timing for select board restructuring. The reason for that, this is in a normal year, we would have had our election, we would have had our town meeting, and this week we would have changed our officers. And so rather than presume that we wouldn't do that, we want to make sure, we want to see what the board, we want to see, have the members agree on what our timing is, whether we go ahead and do something this week or next week, or whether we wait until after the election on June 9th and after the town meeting on June 15th. So that's the purpose for this, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Comments or questions from members?
Mr. Chair, I think we should wait till after we have town meeting, get through the June town meeting before we change our officers.
I have to agree with that.
All right. Any other comments or questions on that?
I agree as well.
Okay. All right. I don't think we need to vote on that. I mean, I think we just we'll go along and we'll do our normal process after the election and after the town meeting. Item 16, town administrator's report.
Nothing more than I said earlier tonight. I think
I'm sorry,
I've done enough speaking.
item 17. I apologize. Item 17, Mike. Sorry.
Nothing more than I've already said tonight. I've done enough speaking, I think.
Okay. Well, it was very well taken. Very well done. Two items from me very quickly. The developer for the East Milton Residences project reached out to the board a week or two ago to connect this morning. Ms. Collins, Mr. Denny, and I had a call with Jennifer Corcoran and Sean McReynolds, the developers for the East Milton Residences. Their message to us is that they had received the comments that we made to Mass Housing. They are beginning the process to respond to those comments. They're working with Mass Housing. They are interested in working with the town in responding to those comments, and they're responding to those comments as part of the project eligibility process with Mass Housing. That includes revising their plans, and that they intend to use best efforts to work with the community on this. going forward. To that end, they have asked, they meaning the developer for East Milton, have asked for all the comments that we received, that the board received on the East Milton project. These are all public records, so rather than making them go through the public records requirement, those I think are in the process of being provided. These records, these public records, without having to go through that process. They have indicated, the developer has indicated, they may want to reach out individually to some of those who provided comments to discuss their comments with them. So if you provided a comment by email or you provided your address in that comment and you don't want someone to reach out to you, let us know. But you know, these are all public records, and so they may well, the developers may well reach out to you to talk about responding to your comments. So that was the discussion that we had today with Jennifer Corcoran and Sean McReynolds. So more to come on that as they work through their process.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Wells.
So you answered my question. I was going to ask, would they be able to see those? There are some very good ones in there that I think both the abutters and the neighbors would like to see read, what would I say, analyzed and perhaps embraced. And I think that's a good thing for all of us. I think they'll be happy to hear that. So thank you both.
They want everything. They want all the comments that we've received, and we're in the process of putting them together. And they want to. I mean, their expressed intent is to use their best efforts to respond.
Okay.
Second thing and final for me, on Saturday at about 2:15 or 2:25, two huge branches from a beech tree on the corner of Fairbanks Road and Walnut fell and blocked the road. Fairbanks Road was completely blocked by these huge branches. And the Milton Department of Public Works Forestry Division came out at the drop of a hat. Marco, Aldo, Dave, and Charlie came out, and they had that thing cleared up in, I think, by 3:30. Completely cleared. And it was a huge, huge thing blocking the street. And they got it all cleaned up by 3:30. Outstanding job by Marco, Aldo, Dave, and Charlie. Obviously, Tommy McCarthy, Chase Berkeley, and Mike Dennehy right up the line. But thank you to them for a great job on Saturday. We have 8 minutes. Members' reports. Ms. Collins.
I just wanted to say thank you for your idea of the traffic committee and the mitigation committee. That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon.
I would just briefly like to thank Rob Mallett of the IT department, who came out to my house today to try to help me with my Zoom connection, which I've had some problems with at recent meetings. And hopefully the audio quality has been a lot better at this meeting. My audio quality that others can hear has been a lot better without the interruptions and the technical difficulties that I've been having. So thank you to Rob.
He did a great job, because you've been
good,
loud and clear, Katie.
That's good. Thank you.
Mr. Wells.
I'm good. Thank you. That's good. We're running out of time. I'm glad they fixed that.
All right, community happenings. I don't have anything listed right now. Public comment response. We had no public comment. I think we'll defer on the minutes without objection. We'll defer on the minutes. And future meeting dates. Let's see. Do we
next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday?
I think we're on for next Wednesday. Would be our regular day, correct?
I think that's right.
No, our regular day would be the 27th.
Okay.
Really?
Do we want to do, what's today, the 13th? So I think we may need a meeting next week. We've had things come up, and this, the collaboration with the United Way Fund, I think we probably need to weigh in on that. But that's my view. Other thoughts?
Right. Well, I mean, I think we did say that if we could get it done sooner and needed to, that we would do that. But I don't know how we'll go back to having a meeting every other week after this. But
Sorry about that.
No, we've
Well, we
needed
can.
we've needed it, and actually, you know, I prefer more small meetings than 5-hour marathons. But
You think these are small?
no, they haven't been. Not all of them, but some of them have, Richard. Some of them have.
Oh, I'm teasing. Yeah.
No, but you're right.
15 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes today so far. Not bad.
Yeah. Well, wait for executive session.
Yeah.
Should we defer the executive session to next week? Because I think we're going to need more than 5 minutes for the executive session.
Well, we're going to WebEx.
Yeah, I think we have a WebEx, Katie.
Okay, I thought we were not. I thought that wasn't possible. Okay.
Hillary, can we move to WebEx for executive session?
Yes, we can. I didn't send it out to avoid confusion. So after this meeting closes, watch your email and I will send the link.
But don't you need to close out this meeting and get us into executive session first in the public meeting?
You do need to move to enter executive session in Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right.
All right. So if we don't need to do it next Wednesday, then I'm fine meeting next Wednesday, but after 5 would be better. If we could move back closer to 7, that would be more convenient. If we have the Zoom channel available. I don't know if the Board of Appeals has a meeting next week.
How do we look next Wednesday at 7?
I'm good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, for lack of a better phrasing, you appear to have dibs.
Dibs, great. All right. It's great. Good to have dibs.
I mean, that's what we've been going, 5, 7, 5, 7 every other week,
Right.
5 p.m. and then a 7 p.m.
Yep.
The 7 p.m. is the one that has the bigger agenda, and I'm sure just what we've deferred tonight and whatever the town administrator and his staff, I'm sure they're going to have more stuff by next week.
Yep.
I don't think you'll have a hard time filling it. I'm willing to do it.
Okay. All right, next Wednesday at 7?
Sounds good.
Without objection. Future agenda items, we'll do this by email because we only have 3 minutes, so I want to make sure we get the motion. I will move to enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, specifically 41 Wharf Street, believing that a discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position or the position of the board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Oh, and I will add my own, and not to return to open session. We'll be adjourning to executive session, not to return to open session. Mr. Zulus, yes. So we are adjourned to executive session. We will see you again next Wednesday on May, what will that be, May 20th?
20th.
May 20th at 7 p.m. Thank you all very much. And Hillary, I guess you will send us the WebEx information for the executive session. Is that how we're going to do it?
That's correct. It should be in your inbox now. If it doesn't work, you all have my cell phone number.
Okay.
Hillary, can you send a hyperlink? Because sometimes it's hard. If it's not a hyperlink, it's hard to get into those. I had a problem with the housing meeting last night without the hyperlink.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Good night. Good evening.
Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening.